Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ASMR review show. And for today's episode, we are going to talk about my favorite band of all time. Tool. I don't really even know where to begin. Tool is a band that I have listened to since about 2008, and I have never, ever grown tired of their music. I may go through phases where I put them aside for a while, but I always come back to them. So, I guess I will just get right down to it. Just gonna go through their discography, talk a little bit about them, and show you guys some vinyls and some CDs. So, this first one we have here is Tool's debut EP before they put out a full studio album. This is Opiate. And this was released in 1992. So Tool had been around for a little bit, just sort of gathering their style, and this EP was their way of sort of getting their name out there. So the track listing is as follows. Side 1, we have Sweat, Hush, and Part of Me. And side 2, we have Cold and Ugly, Jerk Off, and Opiate. The songs Cold and Ugly and Jerk Off are live performances. The rest are studio. And I'll just let you take a look at the back side there. So, I do believe that Tool's overall sound changed after this first EP, but I think it was for the better. I do still really love all of the songs on here. It's very hard for me to find a Tool song I don't like. I would say that Part of Me and Hush are probably the best songs in this album, as Tool's progressive metal style hadn't really become part of their sound yet, but they were heavily inspired by the grunge movement. And once I became a fan of Alice in Chains, I could notice some vocal similarities between Lane Stanley and Maynard James Keenan. And a song like Sweat has some of the heavy riffing and drum riffs that Tool were eventually known for. Funny thing about the song Opiate is on the back here it's only listed as being 5 minutes and 22 seconds long. However, it's the 6th song on the album, and at 6 minutes and 6 seconds into the 6th song there is a hidden track called The Gaping Lotus Experience, and it's a pretty interesting sort of joke song about being crazy because you took too many drugs. There's nothing fancy for packaging on the inside, just the vinyl itself, but there we go. Put that away for now. So, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Opiate to a non-Tool fan, as their sound has changed since then. And it is definitely not the best thing they've released. Once again, I fail at putting vinyls back in. There we go. However, if you do listen to the next album that I'm going to talk about and you enjoy that, I recommend Opiate. And one last look for you. So, let's set that aside for now. So, the next we have is Tool's first full-length album. And this is Undertow. This was released in 1993 as Tool's first full-length album. And this was the one where I believe that the prog influence on their sound started getting a little bit more noticeable. The track listing is as follows. On side 1, we have Intolerance, Prison Sex, and Sober. On side B, we have Bottom, Crawl Away, and Swamp Song. Side C contains Undertow, 4 Degrees, and Flood. And side B contains the song Disgustipated. And there is a bit of a grotesque image on the back, so I'm just warning you ahead of time. But this is the back side. Apparently this pig belongs to the guitarist Adam Jones. So, yeah. Where to begin? I was just listening to this album earlier today because I hadn't in a while, and I was reminded of how flawless side 1 is. Intolerance is still a song that Tool plays live today, and Prison Sex is a very groovy song despite being about a dark topic, which I'm sure you can guess from the title. And Sober is a song about someone who is not necessarily able to break out of their old habits despite the fact that it is slowly destroying them. There were music videos made for Prison Sex and Sober, both of which feature stop-motion animation, as most of Tool's music videos do. And a funny story of mine, when I first got into the band, I showed my mother the video for Sober, which was a poor decision on my part because afterwards she was a little worried that I was incredibly depressed or I needed help. Which couldn't be further from the truth because I was just having a good time listening to Tool, and they are awesome. Bottom is a longer song, and it features a spoken word section in the middle by Henry Rollins, who you may know as the main member of Black Flag, which is a fantastic, classic hardcore punk band. Now, the second half of the album is a little bit weaker, but there are some very underrated songs in there, such as Flood, which has a very sort of droning intro with a very doom-like riff that is repeated for most of the first half of the song. And the last song, Disgustipated, which is nearly 16 minutes long and is all side D of the vinyl, is an interesting track. It is about, well, it begins with a sermon by Maynard about how not only do animals have feelings, but so do plants, and that we need to respect them. And then the rest of the song goes on very darker to talk about how killing those below us is necessary because life feeds on life. There's a cool sound effect in there of a piano being blown apart by a shotgun, which was recorded live by the band. was just thrown off there for a second because I noticed on here that it is side A, side B, side C, and then side B again. Let's see there. So, I don't know who packaged this and made the artwork for it, but they didn't do a very good job. I'm just kidding. It looks great. And the packaging is pretty much identical to Opiate, but I think it's a habit of mine. I just show you guys one side. Because why not? Ta-da! So, there we go. That is Undertow. This is probably my least favorite of Tool's full-length albums, so not counting Opiate. But this is definitely the Calm Before the Storm, the precursor of the awesomeness to follow. And the only reason why... There we go. The only reason why I would rank Undertow slightly lower is simply because these next three albums that we are going to talk about are, in my personal opinion, flawless. There's a reason Tool is my favorite band. I really fanboy hard over them. Set that aside there for now. Okay, so the next album I do not have a vinyl copy of, and that is because it is not in print, and the cheapest used copy that I've seen online is nearly $145. So hopefully someone out there really loves me. So until then, you saw it earlier in the video, I do have it on CD. And this is Ænima. I think that's how you say it. It has the AE combined together. So, I think it's Ænima. Ænima. It's one of those, you guys can decide for yourself. And the back cover of it, let's say, nice eye picture. Oh, we got a little reflection of the camera there. That's nice. So, on the inside, there is some fancy artwork, which I will go into with the little liner notes booklet. Oh yes, it's one of these ones that folds out. I'm not even sure if this has the track listing to it. I might just have to do it from memory, which, if I truly love this album, I should be able to do. Oh, no, I found it. It's right here. This interesting artwork. So, the track listing is as follows. There is Stinkfist, Eulogy, H, Useful Idiot, 46 and 2, Message to Harry Manback, Hooker with a Penis, Intermission, Jimmy, Die Ir von Satin, Push It, Censor of Some Ability, Ænima, Minus Ions, and Third Eye. So, the way the structure of this album works is after the first three songs, between every song there is a shorter interlude, which sort of functions as a little sound experiment. They don't necessarily work on their own, as they are just noise experiments, but then put together with the context of the album, it helps to give sort of a flow between songs. And each one of them has a bit of creativity to them. So, Useful Idiot is the sound of a gramophone record skipping, which was originally at the end of side 1 on the vinyl release. I wouldn't know because I don't have it on vinyl. And then another one, the intermission, is a keyboard riff based on the main riff of the following song, Jimmy. And Die Erde von Satan is a industrial drum beat and guitar riff. And there is a very angry German speaker in it. But what he's actually saying is just a cookie recipe. So I always had fun showing that to people and asking them what it was about, and they thought it was some kind of, hate rally, but it's just a cookie recipe. So maybe I'll translate it and try that one day. And those are most of the interlude tracks. Just show some more of the artwork here. This album was dedicated to the comedian Bill Hicks, who the band believed is another dead hero. After I listened to this album, I did watch much of Bill Hicks's stand-up shows, and I do think he is a very great comedian because while he is funny, a lot of the topics he talks about are very relevant. And I would put him sort of in the same category as George Carlin. Another fantastic comedian. So, as for these songs, my two favorites on here are probably 46 and 2 and Third Eye. 46 and 2 is based on I wouldn't call it simple exactly, but it's a very effective bass riff that is very dark, ominous, and the song builds around this riff to a fantastic climax featuring a drum solo by Dan Carey. And Third Eye is the longest song on the album at nearly 14 minutes long, and this is based on the concept that humans have a third eye, which, if you are able to open through some form of higher understanding, can lead to newfound experiences. And my favorite thing that Tool does that I love them for is the build-up into the heavy riffs and breakdowns, which most of these songs feature. And I could go into a lot of detail about this album, but I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. But let's just say that I love every song in some way. You have Stinkfist, which, well, I think it can be taken as being about fisting, but certain lyrics I think are applicable to other ideas, such as the line, "This may hurt a little, but it's something you'll get used to," which of course relates to the topic of the song, but I always took that to sort of mean about the aspects that you need to persevere in life, such as, moving away where you need to go to a job or to school or something like that, or having to live on your own. It is quite painful, but it's something you can get used to over time because you know that it's something you need to do. And Eulogy is both a tribute to Bill Hicks and an attack on Scientology. H, I'm not exactly sure what it's about, but his son, Maynard James Keenan's son, is named H, so it could be to do with him. And Push It is about an abusive relationship. So, very relaxing topics. At this point, the only people who are still watching are probably either people who want to know more about Tool, or people who have fallen asleep and didn't turn off the video. But we'll see how that turns out. So that's Ænima. Please, somebody, send me the vinyl version. I will love you for almost forever. But I can't commit to loving someone forever in that way. That's a big step. But Ænima on vinyl would get you points. next album I have on both CD and vinyl, so I'm going to start with the CD version, and then we'll look at the vinyl version in a bit. And this is currently, and probably will be for a very long time, my absolute all-time favorite album, and that is Lateralus. The track listing is a little dark, so it might be harder to make out, but it is there. This album was released in 2001, and it's my favorite album. I can't necessarily explain why, other than it's everything I want. It has a deep lyrical concept to it, and all of the instrumentation is top-notch. It's very technical, but it's not overly elaborate. It is right where it needs to be. So, the track listing is as follows. First we have The Grudge, Eon Blue Apocalypse, The Patient, Mantra, Schism, Parable, Parabola, Ticks and Leeches, Lateralis, Disposition, Reflection, Triad, and finally Fape de Oid. I'm not sure how you say it. Fape de Oid? I believe it translates to the voice of God in Latin or some language like that. I'll have to fact check it, or someone can tell me in the comments, maybe. I'm not sure. But we'll get to that song eventually. So, inside, there is this nice little booklet, which features these layers, which are slowly peeling back. Each one reveals a layer underneath the other. Now, what's interesting about this layer that I didn't notice for the longest time, and it might be hard to see on the video, but it is there, trust me, is that the word God is written in the brain matter there. So, I thought that was a bit of an interesting message. I think the idea is that you must explore your own mind to find a higher understanding. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in a specific form, but just your mind knows best. Or something like that. And I am failing at closing this CD because I put that booklet on wrong. Let's do that better. There we go. Before I talk more about the album, I have the vinyl version here as well. It has this very lovely pattern of these interlocking circular discs. And this is a gatefold as well, with more of these interlocking discs, as you can see there. And then on the inside, the packaging is mostly the same as the back of the CD, with more of these discs and the credits on the album. One thing that's interesting is that the track listing was slightly changed for the vinyl version, so that Disposition was placed before Ticks and Leeches and Lateralis. but unfortunately that does break up the flow of the album because the song Disposition, Reflection, and Triad are all meant to be one song that flows together. But then that would be about 27 minutes long, and that would be difficult to fit on one vinyl, or at least on one side. Now, the very cool thing about this is that this is a picture disc, so I actually have a reason to show you guys the record itself. And the pictures are based on the slides and images from the CD booklet. So I felt that was a very clever and effective way to incorporate the artwork from both of them. I'm not sure how early Lateralus was released on vinyl, because this double vinyl picture disc is relatively newer. I mean, I guess it's not new anymore, because I knew about this back in 2012 or so. It's amazing how time flies. And then, I guess I don't technically need to show the second vinyl, but I will, because why not? This will give me a chance to talk about the song specifically. So, the first song, The Grudge, is a song similar to 46 and 2 in that it builds on a similar riff to a very heavy climax, which is also a heavy drum solo for Danny Carey. There is the next picture. And the final one. And as you can see here, God is also written in brain matter. The songs Schism and Parabola were both in the fourth Guitar Hero World Tour. And fun fact, that is how I first heard a Tool song, by playing that game. I had heard of Tool before because in a interview by Guitar World with Alex Lifeson, the guitar player from Rush, him and the interviewer, they were talking about how prog is not a very popular genre. And Alex Lifeson talked about one time he went into Canadian Tire and he heard Schism by Tool play. And the interviewer joked that that was probably because it was at Canadian Tire and they sell tools there. So I thought it was a funny joke, but I hadn't heard of the band before then, and I had never listened to this song. So when I played Guitar Hero World Tour and saw that there was a set list specifically for Tool at the special venue, I thought, okay, this will be an interesting chance. So, yeah, my favorite band of all time is a band that I heard about from Guitar Hero. So, for all of you people that say you can't get into a band from either a movie or TV or video game, you're wrong. It doesn't matter, because I did it. And I'm just glad that I'm here. It doesn't matter how you came to the band, it is the fact that you're into it. So, that is Lateralus. And I guess I have a lot more to say about the songs. So, my favorite song on the album is the title track, Lateralus, and it is probably my favorite song of all time. So, Lateralus is my favorite song and my favorite album. It was released in the year 2001, and 2001: Space Odyssey is my favorite film. So, either it's all connected, or I don't have a wide variety of taste. Probably the second one. The final song on the album, as I mentioned, is a sound experiment called Fangirl, and it features a sound recording from the Art Bell radio show in 1997, I believe. And it is about a man who claims to have escaped Area 51 because the government is using experiments on extra-dimensional beings, and eventually they will have most of the population wiped out so that the few who are left are easy to control. Now, what's a little creepy about this is that during that actual broadcast, immediately after this caller phoned in to the radio station to record this, the entire network went down, and even their backup power went down. So, it's all a conspiracy theory. But yes, I do not recommend Lateralus. I am prescribing it. Like doctor's orders. You need this album. It is fantastic. Unless, of course, you only like generic pop music, in which case this might not be your thing. I mean, if you do like some generic pop music, but you like other things, then I recommend this. But if that's only your style, then you will not enjoy this. So, great, great, great album. So, put that aside for now. Now, the most recent of Tool's albums is from 2006, and it is 10,000 Days. So, it might be a little hard to understand the packaging for this album, but it is quite intricate. It folds open like this. There are pictures from the booklet here, and when you stare through these lenses, they are stereoscopic. So, if you look through, the two images combine together as one to form a 3D image. And I don't think I can get this effect through the lens that well. No, not exactly. Unfortunately, that won't work. You'll just have to buy this album yourself so you can see how cool it is. But in the meantime, I will take a look at the awesome artwork in 3D. I'll show you just another one of the pictures there. Yeah. Most of Tool's artwork is done by the artist Alex Gray, who has this very specific style of recording. Painting. Tool has a very specific style of recording. It is the awesome kind. But most of Alex Gray's artwork sort of is like this, with lots of repeating patterns and multiple layers to it, with a very heavy emphasis on the eye image. And a lot of his art was carried over into the music video, specifically for Parabola from Lateralus and for Vicarious. So, the track listing is as follows. Vicarious, Jambi, Wings for Marie, Part 1, 10,000 Days, Wings, Part 2, The Pot, Lipan Conjuring, Lost Keys, Blame Hoffman, Rosetta Stone, Intention, Right Into, and The Jinty Trez. So, Vicarious was the third song that was in Guitar Hero World Tour. And I'm trying to remember now, did I actually say that? Earlier while I was filming, the camera ran out of memory, and I lost a little bit of footage. I honestly cannot remember. If I end up repeating this part, I'll cut it out, but the song 10,000 Days, which is split into two parts on the album, is probably like my second or third favorite Tool song. It's a tribute to Maynard James Keenan's mother, because she was wheelchair bound and mostly paralyzed for 27 years, or approximately 10,000 days. And it's a bit of a different side of Tool, showing the emotional side, and it's a very, very slow ballad that eventually builds up into a great climax like they always do. And the end of that song is all kinds of special. So, now, 10,000 Days was never officially released on vinyl. Hopefully it will be eventually. It's only been 10 years. But I do have a bootlegged copy of the vinyl. There isn't really much fancy about the packaging, which was my first indication that it was bootlegged, because a lot more thought process was put into the Lateralus vinyl artwork. But one thing that is cool is that it is a red vinyl. This is the problem with buying Tool albums on vinyl, is that there are a lot of bootlegged copies out there. Something I was not aware of until after I bought this. But thankfully, after doing my research, I found that of the many 10,000 Days bootlegs, that this is the better sounding one. So it still is a bootleg, but it still sounds fairly well, fairly good. And it is on red vinyl, so it's kind of pretty. So, the song Rosetta Stoned is about a soldier in Area 51 who witnesses a UFO crash. And the UFO explains that this man is the chosen one who will bring a message of peace to society, and it will be a warning for those who choose to not listen to it. But unfortunately, he goes a little stir-crazy, gets locked up in a mental asylum, and now he's scared that he'll never be able to fulfill his mission to the aliens. Now, what's interesting is that this song is preceded by a sort of sound interlude called Lost Keys Blame Hoffman. And what is interesting is that if both that song and the Fade to Oid song from Lateralus are played at the same time, Fade to Oid will end exactly as the hospital dialogue in Lost Keys begins. So I do have a version on my iTunes where I specifically put those together, because I think it's almost meant to be part of the story. And another hidden track that people have reported combining is to take the final song on the album, Vigenti Tres, which is another noise interlude, and to play that at the same time as the song 10,000 Days, Wings Part 2. And then after that, you're supposed to play Part 1, Wings from Marie. Because at the end of both Part 1 and Part 2 of the song, there is a similar heavy riff. So if you do this right, those heavy riffs will line up with each other. Now, as to whether or not Tool engineered that, maybe. But then again, you know, that may just be because they're my favorite band, so I assume they can do no wrong. But yeah, that's 10,000 Days. I do not love it as much as Ænima or Lateralus, but that is because Lateralus and Ænima are up here, and 10,000 Days is there. Undertow is probably a bit more down there. Yeah. If I ever did a favorite albums list, 10,000 Days would barely miss out of my top 10, and Ænima and Lateralus would be in my top 10. So, that's the comparison. So, as for the future, that is an interesting concept because Tool has been doing small tours for the last few years just around the US. Nothing fancy, no major long tours. And everyone is, on the edge of their seat about whether or not there will actually be a new album. Because Tool has been reportedly in the studio for a while, and at their most recent tour they have played some new music, a song called The Descending. But no one knows for sure. For a while they were involved in a legal battle, which I think was to do with someone who did the artwork before Alex Gray, was sort of the unofficial, artist for the band. And because of this, it cost them a lot of time and money, and it was a very annoying period for the band, so they didn't really feel like they had much creative writing to do at that time. But now that it's all settled, hopefully we'll see a new album soon. It has been 10 years since the last one, but I don't think that we as fans of the band should rush them, because they've always taken their times with albums, and they have never disappointed yet. They do have a few songs that are not as amazing, but overall each album is very well made, and there's a lot of time put into it. So if they want to take their time on an album, I say go ahead. If they want to never make another one again, that's okay. I've got 3 perfect albums to listen to, and another one that's very great, and an EP that is very good as far as debut EPs go. So I don't need to worry about that. They've already given us enough awesome music. And I guess the last thing I could talk about is the time that I saw Tool live, which was in 2010 during a small summer tour. So for that show, they only played about 10 songs, but between each of them they had interludes similar to the way their albums work, so it's almost like they never stopped playing. Even between the encore, they had a drone song playing, which was really cool. So I'm trying to remember the exact set list. It might be easier for me to go by album. The only song they played off of Undertow was Intolerance, but that one was very, very heavy, awesome performance. During live shows, the vocalist Maynard James Keenan has a habit of sort of hanging in the back in the dark, which I like because it doesn't necessarily make it all about him. I think that's a standard misconception of vocalists, that they have to be in the front because they're the voice of the band and it has to be all about their image. Let's see. So, Intolerance was played, Stinkfist, 46 and 2, and Third Eye and Ænima were all played. Third Eye was the opener, which worked really well because the song slowly builds as though humanity is rising out of the primordial ooze and evolving into a higher state of being, because that's what most of Tool's songs are about. From Lateralus, they played The Patient and Schism and the song Lateralus, which was the first encore. And during that song, Danny Carey had a drum battle with the drummer of the opening band, Rajas. And Danny Carey is my favorite drummer. And as much as I loved him, seeing that drum battle just really was amazing. I knew something like that was going to happen because the crew set up a small drum set in front of his during the break between the main set and the encore. And as soon as it got to the middle and he walked out, I was like, oh, I know it's happening. Please happen. I want it to happen. And then the drum battle happened, and I was very excited. I'm going to try not to fanboy too much because that might not be so relaxing, but maybe it's entertaining. You guys can tell me, the 5 of you that watch this video, you can tell me which is better. And then from 10,000 Days, they played Vicarious and Zombie, I believe. I'm trying to think if that adds up. Intolerance, Stinkfist, 46 and 2, Third Eye, Ænima, Schism, Patient, Lateralus, Vicarious, Zombie. Yeah. So, it was mostly their, I guess, more mainstream, shorter songs. But that's okay because those songs are still awesome. So, hopefully they tour around in my area again at some point because I will definitely go and see them. And I will do it whatever it takes to get floor tickets because I was in these stands and the floor was like a sea. During the talk box solo in Zombie, just the whole crowd was just bouncing up and down to the groove. It was a very great experience and probably my favorite concert I've been to. But then again, I'm biased because Tool is my favorite band. So, what do I know? It's incredibly subjective. And I think that was mainly all I had to say about Tool. This is probably going to be a very long video because I can talk for a long time about my favorite band, and I personally feel that I'm holding back in some ways. But I don't want to bore you guys too much. I guess just enough so you guys fall asleep, but not enough where you're just bored and zoned out, because that isn't relaxing. Anyway, hopefully the edits in this video were not too bothersome. I tried to do it in one take, but I forgot what I said previously, and then my camera ran out of battery, and then I wasn't filming, and blah, blah, blah. You guys don't care. Anyway, thank you for tuning into the ASMR review show, and have a great night, and go listen to Tool. Doctor's orders.